Welcome to the Climate Emergency Scrutiny Panel for this particular month in this particular place. We are live. It's a bit of a strange echo up here, so I'll try and ignore that. So just a couple of bits of business before we start the official meeting. We welcome Deborah Collins to the panel. Thank you for joining us. As we did have a vacancy. And also we welcome back Anna Box, who has been having a life moment. Well, I don't quite know how you describe it. I'll let you describe it at some point, possibly not now. And also I'd like to thank Ian Housel as your substitute, Anna, who was, no, that's Hal, that's a different one. Who was a very good substitute and took an active part in the meetings that he attended. So welcome to you and to others who are here this morning. Emergency evacuation procedure.
When the continuous alarm bell sounds, you must evacuate the building by one of the designated exits and proceed to the named assembly point. The designated exits are signposted. Arrangements are in place for the safe evacuation of disabled people.
Okay, thank you. And apologies for absence and substitutions.
I have apologies from Councillor Alex Beaumont, who has been substituted by Councillor Hal McPhee.
Welcome to Hal. Declarations of interest. Okay, I won't say the obvious thing because everybody does. So we'll move on to urgent business. Agreed by the Chair. I have no urgent business, so we can move on very quickly. It doesn't carry on like this, does it? You think, oh God, we'll be out by 10:30 at this rate, but it never does that. So we have the public and councillor statements. We have one member of the public with us, Keris Humphreys, who's going to talk to us about the Journey to Net Zero and Active Travel Master Plan. So are you... yeah. There are traffic lights. I'm sure you're aware of that. So when it goes red, that's when you have to stop talking, basically. Are you speaking from there? Is that the plan? Yes. Excellent. Well, when you're ready.
I want to stress I'm not here for any organisation. These are strictly personal views. I focus on Bath not just because I live here, but because Bath has more ingress of traffic from outside. It's great there's an aspiration to get more people to walk and cycle, but there are big elephants in the active travel master plan room. The current silo approach to policy is misguided. Bath needs much more done on improving buses and mode connectivity to buses, less wasted on cycle routes few can or will use. The report cites LTN 120, but some of the key Bath routes directly conflict with it. Take North Road, average gradient 6.6%, maximum 11.6%, with a steep stretch of 500 metres at 9 to 11%, 1,400 metres continuously at 5% or more. LTM 120 says steep gradients must be avoided, treating more than 5 as steep, and recommending maximum length 30 metres at 5%. It doesn't even bother to list the shorter maximum lengths needed at gradient higher than 5. They're too steep. Steep roads are dangerous for cyclists, and it's sexist to create cycle routes on unlit, isolated roads where women and girls will be deterred from using them from dusk. We need an integrated transport strategy with cycle routes where suitable, but other modes where they're not. And why do all transport plans seem designed to let key traffic generators carry on drawing huge amounts of traffic into and across Bath on ever less road space without meaningful measures to change their behaviour, at cost to health and well-being of residents? Why is there never a plan to reduce car parking at these sites? The report lists key stakeholders for consultation, some of the organisations generating most of Bath's traffic, who aren't expected to change much at all. But resident representation is excluded as a key stakeholder, though some residents will pay the price of enabling key stakeholders to continue their parking-centric behaviour. We have a uni with thousands of cheap parking spaces and an out-of-date 2016 travel plan. I've been surprised many residents won't take the behaviour change message seriously when a university ignores the behaviour change message of their own academics who are international leaders in the field. We have a large sports stadium where a 2022 travel plan was found extensively non-compliant in planning by Baines Highways, but just allowed anyway. We have a hospital with a business model built on parking income that's signed up to Clean Air Hospital Framework. Nice box to tick, but when will we see concrete measures that the framework recommends? The big privately owned car parks in Bath are considered only in ensuring changes don't interfere with traffic to these massive traffic magnets. Local people take the consequences. School plans, another great tick box, yet where's the actual action? So, what concrete measures are we going to see to address the lack of action by large traffic generators? When will Baines do the right thing and include resident representation with equal access and influence alongside these key stakeholders? Thank you.
Thank you. You make some very interesting points. Does anyone have any factual questions for Keris? Saskia?
Thank you for your statement. Would you welcome a workplace parking levy?
Absolutely, I would. It obviously substantially paid towards the Nottingham tram service. Why don't we have one? I don't understand. It was put on the agenda for consideration years ago, and we don't seem to have made any progress.
Any other factual questions? Anna?
Oh, thank you for your statement. I represent a ward in North East Somerset. Can you recognise that in regards to the Bath Hospital, that we do need car parking, as we don't have joined up thinking from WECA for public transport into our city?
I 100% agree we need the joined up thinking, and I do see that there are different issues with people coming in from Neus. But why on earth are the journeys of drivers who come in and drive past the park and ride and then do a short journey within Bath? Why are those short journeys within Bath treated differently from the short journeys that people do within Bath? They're still short journeys in Bath. You know, and if you actually look at, repeatedly, the people who write these reports talk about the 25% of short journeys. What they never really point out is that 25% of short journeys actually equates to a really tiny proportion of the fossil fuel use, the carbon burden of transport. And so it's not good enough just to focus on the short journeys. We need a lot more, you know, sort of wider thinking to actually cover those longer journeys, but stopping them earlier. Why is
You're
it
wandering away from a
past?
factual answer now. You're giving an opinion, so I'm going to have to
Okay,
stop you there. For anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance. Okay, we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anyone have any accuracies or follow-ons they'd like to bring up at this point? Do we have somebody to approve them? That's Jess and Saskia. Okay, those in favour? Oh, it's a vote. Those in favour? I think that's everyone. Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to the Cabinet Members' updates now. Just a reminder that, as I think I've said already, any questions need to relate to the update and not just anything that the Cabinet Member might be responsible for. So according to my agenda, Mandy, you're first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies for not circulating an update in advance, which is what I normally do. All I can do is say both the pre-election period and staff absences impacted the capability of doing that. There will be quite a lot of information in this, so I hope that you'll be able to take on board the volume of work that we're currently trying to deliver. So, general update, our carriageway and footway servicing programme has completed approximately 60% of the 2024-25 programme, which is on track for us completing it entirely. That is actually to the credit of our teams, because those of you who've stayed in Bath over the last 2 or 3 months will realise the weather has been against us, so it's been very, very difficult to do some of these things, so that the teams have worked incredibly hard. North Parade Bridge opened on target. We said it would be closed for 6 to 8 weeks. It was closed for 7 weeks. And we found no nasties when we started doing the work. We are going to have to do some work underneath the surface, which will impact on boats coming up and down the river. But in terms of bikes, pedestrians and cars, it is fully open. We've been working very hard on 3 major crossings, so the zebra crossings at Hope House, Lansdowne and Western Lane have all been completed. We were unsuccessful at getting money to upgrade our very tired and out-of-date traffic signalling, so we are carrying on bidding for DFT for more money to do that. Until we get that, lots of the things that we would like to do, like doing more prioritisation for pedestrians when they come up to a traffic signal, is not possible until we get newer equipment. The City Centre Security Scheme, we have finished the Upper Borough Walls section. Our work is progressing well on Lower Borough Walls. We are scheduled to finish in November 2024. In terms of ongoing highways maintenance, as opposed to things we've done, the footway paving improvements in Queen's Square have been completed, and we have invested an additional 60% in pavement work this year, not just in the centre of Bath, but throughout a lot of our villages, and we're seeing the benefit of that. The emissions-based parking TRO was prepared and was ready to go pre-election. But obviously in the pre-election period we took advice from the lawyers who told us what we could and what we couldn't do in the pre-election period, so we did not put that out at that stage. It is, however, going to go out today. In terms of the Livable Neighbourhoods programme delivery, the Sydney Road Experimental Traffic Order has gone in place, and we will be putting a press release out again either today or tomorrow about the next livable neighbourhood, which will be the Lower Lansdowne 3 schemes connected. Forward plan for next period, we are looking at a new bus stop maintenance contract. One of the big things that the Chair asked me to talk about was a Transport Action Plan, which will be coming to Cabinet this evening. And it fits in well with what my colleague Sarah is going to talk about later, in that the Transport Action Plan is a snapshot of what is happening now. It will be a map-based tool where anyone can go online and click on their local area and see what's coming up. It will be obviously a working document, so as more things are agreed, they will go on to the Transport Action Plan. And ultimately, we want our partners, such as Wessex Water and Network Rail, to also say when they intend to be doing work on the highways, so that the plan will reflect not just what we're in control of, but it will also reflect what WECA do and what Wessex, etc. do. Park and Ride, we are looking at doing a full business plan for that. We've had it in-house now for 18 months and we are ahead of target in terms of budget, which means we've got a little bit of headroom to try some of the things that we really want to do. Interesting to hear what the public speaker was saying around the RUH, because one of the things we're really keen on doing is getting a dedicated RUH service from the Park and Rides in order to stop those last few mile bits. So that's what we have to do. I thought it might be useful if I just say, in terms of volume, what we're doing in terms of scheduling. So this week we have released the fact that North Parade Bridge has opened. Yesterday we did a big action day on blue badge misuse and did a press release on that. Today the consultation on parking charges in Baines goes live. Next week we're going to be talking about the road changes that were introduced in West Hartree, the consultation on the A368 speed limit, and there's a big national highways survey going out, which we always take part in, and we will be trying to ask the residents who are selected to do this. They do it via an agency that chooses people according to our demographic. But we will be encouraging anyone who's asked to do that to fill in. We did very well last year in some bits and other areas where it said we probably required improvement. I'm looking forward to seeing whether or not we've done that improvement in the year. And the last thing that I want to tell you is that, and it possibly will go out either today or tomorrow, National Highways, who obviously own the A36, are going to have to close the Warminster Road for essential repairs for a significant period of time. We will work as well as we can with them in terms of trying to make sure that we keep pointing people at their communications channels show, and to our own residents and to parish councils, but there's no way that the A36 can be closed for what looks like 6 to 8 months without it having a knock-on effect to the rest of our network. That, I think, covers the things that I want to bring to your attention. I'm more than happy for any questions on any of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Manda. Does anyone have any questions for Manda? Saskia?
Thank you for the update. Why was the bid for traffic signalling updates, improvements, why was that unsuccessful? Do you know?
So it was a competitive bid along with lots of other councils. Actually, in some ways, my understanding is we almost fell foul of not being quite bad enough. So there were others who've got older pieces of equipment that sort of scored higher than us, and ours is bad but wasn't quite at the level of saying it needs to be redone. So we're very hopeful that we will get some funding in the near future.
Anna and then Saskia.
Thank you for your update. Last time we spoke, I asked a question about the park and ride around Christmas, and some of the feedback from our residents out in the more rural villages was around timing. And you say the budget is firming up a little bit nicer. Do you have plans to extend, and what is the timescale for those plans, please?
We absolutely do have plans to change, and I think the timescale would be we'd start doing trials in the run-up to the Christmas market and test what kind of demand there is. There is that thing about you have to make something available for a certain amount of time before people get used to it and can then rely on it. But absolutely, both the timings of the operation of Park and Ride and the routes, so that people don't just have to come into the middle of Bath because sometimes they may want to get to the university or the RUH, are the two things we're going to be looking at changing as soon as we can.
Yeah, strictly speaking, you shouldn't have asked that because it's not part of the update, but Manda's... Oh, did you? Oh, apologies. I take it back. I'm in trouble. Okay, Saskia.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the Transport Action Plan, the TAP. So councillors were recently invited to comment on the Transport Action Plan. It was a long list of all transport improvement schemes in the pipeline, but it still isn't clear to me as a ward councillor how we can get schemes added. So we've got a meeting booked in. But I wanted to ask, how do the Transport Action Plan, the Local Highways Improvement Programme, formerly known as TIP, and the Active Travel Master Plan interact? Because we in Lambridge have had numerous meetings with officers about mostly walking links, and we can't seem to get them onto any of these plans.
So the interaction is that they're almost snapshots at different stages in a programme. So the Active Travel Master Plan is, as Sarah will explain, forward-looking and helps us bid for money and all that. You wouldn't expect to see something on the Active Travel Master Plan in the Transport Action Plan, because that is just saying these are the things that are now agreed. I know you've got a meeting with officers, I think it's next week, to go again through the process of how you make sure that you get your bids in at the right time. They're all very objectively scored. So that we always have far more requests for money than we have money to actually do, which is why it's great we've got the professional officers who will come in and say, actually, because that's near a school or it's a key cycling route, that is, that scores more highly than somewhere else. So they'll go through that again with you next week, and then that will be the process by which you can apply for money for next year's budget. This year's budget is spent.
Okay, let's move on to Sarah?
Hi. So I've got some feedback for you on climate and ecology this morning, because the whole rest of the meeting is around transport. So in terms of green infrastructure, work is progressing on producing the framework that will provide an evidence base for the new local plan and incorporate new Natural England principles and green infrastructure standards. And it will replace our current green infrastructure strategy. There was a stakeholders workshop on the 1st of July to develop the investment and delivery plan. And 2 internal planning workshops will take place in July with a range of people from around the council to integrate delivery into council and developer schemes to create sustainable places and economy, with a draft framework coming forward to the public in October. Then, in terms of nature recovery, we're working with the Forest of Avon Trust and have successfully bid to be one of the 4 areas of the country who are shortlisted for a £10 million grant to create a new forest for the nation. So that means we're working on the next round of bid, and if the final bid is successful, we would work across the west of England, Gloucestershire and Wiltshire to expand woodland cover and improve woodland management across that sort of landscape. We've also supported Avon Needs Trees to secure another opportunity for woodland creation in Bath and North East Somerset, the 422-acre Lower Chew forest. It will be a significant contribution towards our ambition to double woodland cover across the district by 2050. We are utilising funding that we've received through Biodiversity Net Gain now, which is the change we made to planning policy ahead of government mandating it. So we're one of the leaders in the country actually on that. It includes enhancing 0.5 hectare of bramble scrub to more biodiversity-rich mixed scrub at Charlcombe Meadows, and we expect to replicate this approach on other sites as demand grows, so demand from developers who are unable to improve biodiversity on the site that they are developing can pay us to develop our sites, to improve the biodiversity at our sites. One of our most important pieces of work is ensuring the local plan helps us to deliver nature recovery. In addition to Biodiversity Net Gain, we've got other policies emerging, including a requirement for sustainable urban drainage systems and requirements for developments to have more and better green infrastructure, as well as local targets for tree cover. Our Nature Recovery Manager is leading the development of the local nature recovery strategy for the West of England, which has been to public consultation and is on course to be first in the country to go for publication. We continue to work closely with the West of England Combined Authority and our neighbouring unitary authorities to improve our evidence base and monitoring for nature recovery. Including developing a better understanding of our protected sites and monitoring the abundance and diversity of species. Then on the Climate and Nature Annual Report, which we had hoped to bring to this meeting today and to the Cabinet this evening, it was deferred because there was a delay in government releasing the most recent year's data. And in fact, that data has now been released last week, so we will be able to bring this to you in your September meeting if you would like it. In terms of what we're doing on the climate emergency, we continue to take action across the district, including Green Open Homes event. So we did a Green Open Homes event last autumn when homeowners, we teamed up with Bath and West Community Energy, and about 800 people visited 22 homes that their homeowners had retrofitted and had opened up to show others and inspire others about how to go forward with doing the same to their own home. We've also launched the Green Heritage Homes project, which provides advice about retrofitting historic buildings. We're working on decarbonising the council's commercial estate, which has improved from 27% in March 2022 to 56% in March this year of units which have the highest range of energy performance certificate ratings between A and C. We're also working on the enforcement of minimum energy efficiency standards in rental properties. And there's lots of other good news that we will bring you as part of the annual report on climate and ecology in September. And then there's other good news about what we're doing on our own estate. We're putting on rooftop solar at Haycombe Cemetery, as well as we've obtained funding from Sport England to put rooftop solar on Bath Sport and Leisure Centre. And more widely across the district, construction is now underway at the new Marksbury solar farm, which will generate up to 15 megawatts.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Amanda. I forgot to thank you before. Any questions for Sarah? Jess?
So that we look at green homes more widely, not just in terms of energy efficiency, but in terms of things like nature-friendly gardens, water butts, sustainable paving, you know, people keeping their hedges and not paving their whole gardens, nature-friendly gardens, basically. I think there's a real opportunity and some really good examples across Baines. Possibly Wessex Water might be a good partner if we needed some funding for the scheme. So just a kind of suggestion and question.
That's a great suggestion, and my colleagues next to me are even noting it down, so I'm sure we'll take that forward.
Yeah, really good idea, Jess. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. Well, thank you, ladies. I hope you will stay. I know Amanda's staying, and I'll be very surprised, Sarah, if you're not staying. So that's good. And we've also welcomed Matt to the meeting, who's going to speak later on. Okay, so we move on to the next item, which is creating communities in North East Somerset, the Journey to Net Zero Transport Strategy. Now, we have 40 minutes for this event. So, Sarah, I assume you're kicking off?
Yes, so, I mean, people sometimes tell us that Bath and North East Somerset Council focuses on Bath. Today's agenda is in large part about North East Somerset. So, we are launching today a consultation that sets out a future vision for the coming decades in which the car is less dominant in some of our North East Somerset towns, and it shows how we can begin to transform our towns for the better, giving residents a real choice of modes of transport and improving the public realm. Okay, you're going to go on to the next overhead for me. Thank you. So we know that some of our towns are not well served at the moment with public transport or with safe cycling. And what we're seeking to do is to provide a real choice of modes for those people and those journeys where an alternative to the car is possible. So what we are aiming to see is better connected, healthier and more sustainable communities. We're consulting on today and through the summer and setting into policy. So we're consulting on these new strategies over the summer and aim to set into policy our vision for our towns, which will put us into the position where we can then apply successfully for funding opportunities, because, as you know, councils often have to go through this competitive bidding process, and the more we have a vision set out in policy, the more successful we are likely to be as part of that process. And the other advantage to doing this is that it will show our communities how do the individual puzzle pieces of individual small changes fit together in the bigger picture. So, for instance, we've heard earlier about the Active Travel Master Plan. How does that fit in? Well, you know, the more of these policies we bring forward, the more people understand that is just one puzzle piece, really, actually, of a wider mosaic of all forms of sustainable transport that we are interested in. So the question is, how have we got to this point? So there have been workshops in the communities over last year. So the discussions took place with communities, with key stakeholders, to find out what people felt the travel challenges were for them. We've also analysed data to see what is really happening now. And this document now puts forward, it explains what those issues are that we've identified and that the communities have identified, and then it aims to propose options that could address the problems that our communities are currently facing. In many instances, there are options, and you know, some of the policies put forward will be scalable. So some could be done to a small extent, or alternatively to a larger extent. We're looking to the future with a vision of a healthy, vibrant community where the car is playing a less central role. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Keynsham and Salford and what we learnt there. A number of concerns were highlighted with the current transport network. So we've got some of those up there. Concerns about bus journey times, that it was most convenient to drive, that there's congestion, that not all the car parking in Keynsham is always used, that cycling, walking and wheeling facilities are not joined up enough, that the A4 and the rail lines form a barrier through the town centre, and that there is often too much traffic in the town centre to feel safe when walking or cycling. and what we have started to do then in this document, which will be launched today, and a more detailed document will be coming out than you've had in your pack so far, identifying potential solutions to lots of these issues. So, for example, reimagining Keynsham Town Centre with a possible pedestrianisation of the High Street, continue to pursue a rail station for Saltford, more segregated cycle lanes, improving cycling routes between the communities with good infrastructure and access to the local centres, bringing in this concept of mobility hubs, which will bring together lots of different transport options into one place, and then reducing the impact of the railway and the A4 as a barrier. That's the next one. So this is a summary of Summer Valley. Lots of the issues, of course, were very similar, but there are some differences. So Summer Valley is a hillier place, there's more topography to deal with, especially if you're talking about active travel. So we went through the same process here. So there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. For some people and for some journeys, cars will always be essential, because walking, cycling and public transport will not always be an option. But what we want to do is to enable people to have that choice. And what we recognise actually in Summer Valley is that there are places people are keen to go, such as Frome, Bath and Bristol, which are very difficult to do those journeys without a car at the moment. And also that there's a lack of local employment, which leads to a need for out-commuting and much more limited bus connections than we would wish to see. So we have lots of proposals in this document that address those issues. On to the next one. Now, Hicksgate, we are considering, it's a bit different because very few people live there now, and this is about provision for any future new community that might be located here. So what we are seeing here is at the moment it's a major interchange with a lot of traffic that passes through, a high proportion of lorries. It's very intimidating for any pedestrians or cyclists. We've got limited crossings over the river, the railway and the main roads. And so what might happen here is we envisage there's the potential to relocate Brislington Park and Ride, but where traditional park and ride facilities are designed solely for use by car drivers, our vision of what might replace that is quite different. This facility would enable convenient interchange between a range of different modes, providing safe access for walking, wheeling, cycling, as well as secure sheltered cycle and scooter parking, incorporating electric vehicle, car club vehicles, e-bike and e-scooter hire options, in addition to car parking, and that all of these modes would then be connected with frequent fast bus services, not only to the city centres, but also to more local destinations. So the objective is that there will be a degree of integration that will provide for sustainable transport options for a very wide range of journeys from this location. Go on to Whitchurch. So Whitchurch, again, many of the same issues as the other towns we've spoken of, except that in Whitchurch, residents are very keen to protect the rural character of the surrounding area. And our focus is on enabling people to move more conveniently and safely around their village and on the connections to key services slightly further afield, such as the leisure centre. So we'll go on to now the next steps. So we're consulting with our communities for 6 weeks. And then, when we've got to a vision, so we will make amendments based on what we hear. This is a genuine consultation, and we want to learn how we can make this vision a better vision for people who live in these places. Once we've got a vision that we're comfortable with, we will be able to model the impacts upon flows of traffic, and in due course the visions can be adopted into policy. It will take time and significant investment. And in lots of instances, I hope I've explained that we don't always have that money available to us now, and that one of the purposes of creating this document is to put us in a position to bid for that money. So it's very difficult to map out exactly what will be delivered in what year beyond the things that are already appearing in the Transport Action Plan, because those are the things that are funded now. We aim to reflect the level of ambition from our communities and from the Council as a whole. And somewhere in the materials, we have broken down our proposals into what are likely short, medium and long-term projects. So it will be a patchwork of piecing together different funding options, for example, public sector funding, also from third parties, and we're working closely with stakeholders like the West of England Combined Authority to ensure delivery. So we've listened to what the community have told us so far, and we're very keen to listen again. We have public consultations coming up over the coming weeks, which I will, at the very end, actually after we've done the active travel master plan, I've got a slide which will have all the dates and locations on them. But anyway, there are 4 consultations coming up in the coming weeks, and we really want to listen to and read all the responses that people have. So that's all on this section. I'm assuming you'll take the active travel master plan up afterwards separately. Yep.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm sure there are questions. So who's first? Hal?
A couple of things on Keynsham. First of all, the idea that the car parks are not full. I mean, let's just be realistic and say there are 1,600 homes that we know about that are heading into Keynsham, plus people that want to shop in Summer Valley see Keynsham as a target, and there's an extra 3,000 of those. So my view is good that they have some space there, and I'm sure that actually we'll end up needing more. On the cycling, I have to say thank you to Sarah and her colleagues for the visit that they did with us last week. And to be honest, they showed us routes that we didn't think were possible down Bath Hill. And we also talked about a new idea of having the cycles going up the bypass, and that providing the bridge that we need to avoid the cycling going through the park. And we'll be making that case in our written submission. On Hicks Gate, I agree with everything that is there, but it's not clear to me how much housing is actually going to go into Hicks Gate and where it's going. And is that under your control or is that Bristol?
Do you want me to try those? Okay. In terms of the car parks, I know that data, aside from, so it was raised by some of the residents at the stakeholder workshops as something that they had noticed, and I believe that it is supported by data, and Claire can give full details if you would like it, or we can send them afterwards of how and where the data was collected. But as I said, none of this is immediate. It's all about just keeping car parking under review and keeping a balance to see. How does driving to Keynsham and parking, how is that comparing with the alternative modes? And, do we need to do anything to kind of encourage, incentivise people to perhaps think about things differently? So it's just about keeping that under review going forward. In terms of Hicks Gate, there's probably more of a question for Matt, who is in the room, but in terms of how much housing, as I understand it, it's all subject to the local plan consultation, which is ongoing, so I don't think we have answers to that. Is that correct, Matt? Do you want to take that question? Or?
Oh, there we go. So Hicks Gate is allocated for a certain amount of housing. That will be consulted on, as will Keynsham North. But that number could go up or down depending on the outcomes of the consultation. So it's really important that people still continue to consult on the draft local plan.
Asked about whether it was Bristol or Baines, and as I understand it, the potential...
Can I just interrupt there for a minute? The other question about Bristol, the housing in Bristol, I assume there's some cross-border cooperation between Bristol and Baines about... Yeah.
So obviously, Bristol are obviously very keen that we do move the park and ride, as we agreed to in the Local Transport Strategy 4. They're really keen so that they can develop that site for housing. In fact, the whole of that site, Bellway Homes, I believe, are ready to go on a site next to the allotments. So they are. I have had meetings with Bristol. They are keen to get started as part of their local plan. They're slightly ahead of us, so they've been encouraging us to sort of move as quickly as possible, and we will be looking for their support to develop Hicksgate as well.
What's that? Oh, I turned it off. Yes, the thing is that we need to know those numbers as part of our response to the local plan, because we are fighting to stop having so much building going on, and we see Hicksgate as an important component. So it's important to us to know. But are you saying those houses will not count towards Baines? They'll count towards the Bristol total?
If it's in Baines, it's our total. If it's in Bristol, it's Bristol's total.
It's not clear yet where the houses will be.
It's not clear yet where the houses will be, but there'll be houses, I would imagine, both sides of the boundary. But our side, there are houses. Their side, it's their houses. You know, we're not trying to build to solve Bristol's housing crisis at the moment, although we have to see if we can. We have to look at those numbers to see if we can. But at the moment, we're looking for those local responses with that local knowledge to feed into our thinking, as well as the desk-based exercises that officers do anyway.
Okay. Grant has got a couple of questions for you, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for the report. I'm probably going to sound quite cynical in my questions, but just based on experience. A big part that features in this is mobility hubs, and while I think they're a good idea, we've had similar things stated in the past. Some of the panel members might not be aware, but we had the clean air zone was supposed to have delivery hubs, and to my knowledge, those hubs aren't in place, or they're never going to be in place. So I don't want these hubs to be a sort of tokenistic gesture that actually nothing actually happens, nothing comes of it. So I just want you to sort of map out or give us a bit more detail on what those mobility hubs will look like, and what they're actually going to do for our communities. And hopefully it's not just going to be some more words in a report that doesn't actually materialise into something meaningful for our local communities. And then I can. Yeah.
Well, you've raised the clean air zone there. I mean, I know trials were done around last mile delivery with, I think, mixed success. In terms of mobility hubs, there are some currently on the agenda as part of the City Region Sustainable Transport Fund, Summer Valley Links programme, so we'll see some coming forward. And as you know, it's West of England Combined Authority that we're working very closely with on delivering those, so we can expect to see some coming forward. I think in terms of how they will look, it will be horses for courses. So there'll be town centre hubs proposed, which would not involve car parking, which would involve, some of them might be as simple as a bus stop with associated secure bike parking, but in slightly more rural locations there may be scope to include some parking, perhaps when we can get the scooters extended out and so on, extended out to Summer Valley, so there will be other options. So it will be horses for courses.
You're saying that a bus stop and a cycle rack will constitute a hub, potentially?
Maybe town centre locations where there isn't room to provide significantly more than that, isn't there? But equally in places where there's more space, there'll be scope to put in much more storage and, scooter parking. I mean, at places where there's a large hub, you can have space for car club, electric vehicle hire and so on. So it will just depend on the location.
And my final question is just, there's a point in the report about the idea that we're still pursuing a train station in Saltford. There's no further information. As far as I'm aware, you committed to that in your 2019 manifesto, and so you're still pursuing it, but what's actually happening?
You might want to address that query to the Transport Authority, the West of England Combined Authority.
Can I just add, I mean, in terms of hubs, mobility hubs, I mean, one of the things I want to see, and I hope it happens, is a cycle path along the bypass and a link to Keynsham via a cycle and walking link to Keynsham from the centre of the town via the park, because that would be a good example of a hub, in the sense that you get action from the people of Keynsham down onto the bypass to pick up the X39 and various other buses. So that's in the report, and I welcome that. Are there any other questions? Saskia.
Thank you, Sarah, for the update for the report. I've got a question on school travel. I would like to know how many school children are travelling under 3 miles or under 4 miles. I think because this report covers the next 20 years, I think there's masses of potential for us to look at how particularly teenagers are moving around. And I guess a lot of them are currently travelling to school by bus, for example, or, well, they're probably being driven to school a lot. So I think that the report is lacking in this area.
It's a great suggestion. We'll take that forward. Perhaps we can include something on school travel in the future.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, I'll dive in with a couple then. So, just going back to, I mean, I'm a great supporter of pedestrianising Keynsham High Street. Keynsham High Street is quite a popular location for news hounds and various other international incidents concerning tripping and the rest of it, and it seems to me that would be a very good way of sorting out that problem, which has been a bit of a bane of my life over the last few weeks. And also very keen on the cycle route along past Keynsham Cemetery up to Hicksgate from the High Street, because that will help a lot. And going back to the A4, what I call the Lycra Brigade, you know, that is a barrier. The Lycra Brigade won't cycle through Keynsham, you know, because it's out of the way, it's annoying. Some people might say very annoying. So that would be very, very important to have a continuous cycle path between a very direct route from Bath to Bristol, which we lack. The railway path's great, but it sort of wanders off to strange places like Mangotsfield and Staple Hill and places like that. So is there anything for anybody else? Right, well, we're slightly ahead of time now. Oh, Sarah, yes, do come back.
Can I respond? So I just wanted to say that I completely agree with you, Andy, that we need cycle routes both from Keynsham to the A4 and along the A4, and we continue to make the case to the West of England Combined Authority, because I believe as part of the City Region Sustainable Transport Fund, there is some spare money freed up after certain other projects not in Baines have been, I think, delayed. And so we continue to make the case that for us that's a very high priority to have routes in both those locations, not just one of them.
Okay, so we shall move on then to the next item on Sarah's portfolio, which is the Active Travel Master Plan, which is a substantial document, and I'm sure we all studied every one of those 100 pages in great detail to ensure that everybody is up to speed. So I'm looking forward to your presentation and the questions that will follow. So over to you. Sorry you're being burdened with a lot of work today, Sarah.
It's all right.
You're doing well.
It's a hectic week. As people are probably aware, we're not allowed to publish consultations of this sort during the pre-election period, so a lot of them have got announcements and consultations have got stacked up and saved for this week. So that's the reason you haven't had an advance update from me, and it was all been verbal as well. So in terms of what is this master plan, so we know that over a third of car trips across Bath and North East Somerset are less than 5 kilometres. And we believe that the Active Travel Master Plan unlocks the barriers to active travel for those who want to make those shorter journeys differently. And we believe that delivery of this master plan over the coming years will enable people to choose an affordable and healthy mode of transport. So it is a long-term plan, as we've explained, but we're publishing it in this way in order to obtain funding. It's not the only thing we're doing, and later this year, or perhaps early next, we will be publishing, for example, a Bath movement strategy that would address all forms of transport around Bath, and we continue to work on many other measures that are, all of them together form a mosaic that aims to tip the balance into a less car-dominant way of living our lives, really. So this is just one strand to emphasise that. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So, when walking, wheeling and cycling, people tend to be vulnerable when they are mixed up amongst motorised traffic, and so we're very keen to protect people from busy motor traffic so that we can enable them to take more journeys sustainably. So what are the benefits of choosing active travel? So I cycle quite a lot myself, and when I'm not cycling I'm often walking, and I would say two of the big benefits for me are it's free and it's fun. But aside from that, we're looking at improved health and well-being. We're looking at addressing transport poverty and social cohesion and economic prosperity. So studies have shown that pedestrians and cyclists spend more time in their local centre. We know that running a car is very expensive and is unaffordable for some, which means that if you don't have a car, there's a risk of social exclusion and of being marginalised in society. Some low-income families are forced into owning a car because that's what, functioning in society requires, and there is a lack of realistic alternatives, placing a large financial burden on them. Transport, we know, is the single largest household expense, excluding mortgage repayments for rural families, and the second largest one for urban ones. Transport costs are pushing over 5 million people, or 8% of the population, into poverty, and walking and wheeling is the most affordable form of transport. Cycling costs are very low when compared to other forms of transport. Go to the next. So recently, I was really fortunate to attend the Bath and North East Somerset Climate Youth Conference on the 8th of May. And on this occasion, we ran a session with some teenagers and we asked them what the barriers were to active travel. And you can see there a word cloud that talks about the things that they felt were making it difficult for them to move around independently. So we asked them, what are the main things that make you feel unsafe or that stop you from walking and cycling? And what do you think we need to do at the council to enable you to walk and cycle more? It's also worth noting that a couple of years ago we commissioned Britain Thinks to run a citizens panel which was aimed at giving a representative group of local people their say on the principles that should guide the council when bringing in active travel in their local area. And they said, firstly, that active travel routes should offer an easy and appealing alternative to short car journeys. They should have clear and effective safety features so that new cyclists especially feel happy to use them. They should be connected and integrated into the wider transport network, and they should be careful not to disadvantage those who can't easily choose active travel. So those are the principles we have brought to designing this master plan. We'll go on. So in terms of what's in the master plan, so we know that there are actually most households in Bath and North East Somerset do own at least one car, but we know that a quarter of households don't own any car. This is an opportunity to set out the improvements that are needed to enable residents to travel and access key services and opportunities by active modes. One thing I would say about it, actually, is that what it doesn't define, so what we have aimed to do, and you will find when you get onto the consultation page, which is launching today, I hope once it's working properly, you will be able to click through to a map, and you will be able to see a map, and you will be able to make comments on there. But what it does not do is to define what those cycle routes might look like. And again, it's another thing where it's horses for courses, and it will depend on the kind of environment that each individual cycle route is in. So it's not telling us that every line on that map, for example, means a road closure or removed parking. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't tell us anything about the type of cycle lane in any given location. It's just telling us at this stage those places which represent important movements of people around our district where we would want to see safe cycling and walking provided. So we are considering the needs of disabled people who can't walk or cycle, and the infrastructure and improvements we provide will be inclusive and allow everyone to use them. I believe the plans are going to be considered by our equalities panel imminently. And what it means is if we are effective in providing real alternatives for people to the car, it will mean that our roads will be less congested, so that for people, either individual people or individual journeys for which car is the only option, there should be less congestion for them to contend with. So the master plan has been developed for every type of user. We've identified quick routes, which is the fastest route for a commuter, and we've also identified quiet routes, which might be nice for a family cycle ride, and which might have lower traffic volumes. And disabled people face significant barriers to walking and cycling, and the master plan considers that, setting out ways in which the facilities and design of the network can be as inclusive as possible. Right, on to the next, please. So what's in the master plan? So you will have an interactive map where you can view all the routes and you can drop in pins. There's a cycling map, and there's also a missing walking links map that you should be able to comment on. Equally, if you find other facilities that are missing, such as cycle storage, or where you can also comment to us where existing footways are not fit for purpose. So the active travel network, particularly the cycle network across Bath and North East Somerset, is fragmented because it has historically been delivered in a piecemeal manner. There are gaps between safe infrastructure, and it can be difficult to plan a journey because you may have to navigate through sections that don't have safe infrastructure. This master plan gives us a comprehensive network, and once again, just like the previous strategy, what it's about is obtaining funding. So once we've set it out in policy, and as I say, this also is a genuine consultation. We know that what we're putting out to the public today, it will not necessarily be as good as it can possibly be, and we want input genuinely from anyone who feels that they know of places where they would like to see improved active travel. We want to hear from you because it will be better. So if we've missed out any missing links, we want to know all about them. And we want to know any that we've suggested that actually don't feel suitable. And we want to know any information about any particular barriers to active travel that people have come across. So the next steps, the other thing I was going to say actually was, aside from bidding for money, so having it set out in policy in this way enables us to bid for money, but lots of times when we have the opportunity to bid for money, there'll be set criteria associated with, so if it's government or whichever other funding body is providing the money, they will set criteria around it. So we may have to pick and choose which scheme is it that's going to fit those criteria best. So again, because of the funding streams and how they have worked in the past, I don't know if they'll still work that way going forward after the change of last week, but the way they've worked in the past, it has been difficult as a council to always plan and do things in a logical order, because you're a bit dependent on what pots of money come up. But what having a plan will do, it will also enable us to express to the public why it is that they are seeing, they might be seeing an isolated few hundred metres of cycle lane popping up somewhere, but actually if they can see a plan that says, well, actually, it's not a white elephant, it's not the road to nowhere, what it is a portion of a route to Bristol, for example, then they can understand much better what it is that we're trying to achieve. So in terms of the next steps, It is deliberately aspirational. It reflects a commitment in the coming years and even decades to transforming the way people move around. It puts us in the best possible position to obtain funding, and we will use it to promote the inclusion of our community's preferred schemes onto the agenda of the West of England Combined Authority, and to obtain funding through the Department for Transport's Active Travel Fund. And we can also use it to guide developer investment into active travel schemes. It will enable us to achieve funding and to harness investment and explain to our residents. We've listened to what our community have told us so far, and we're very keen to listen again. So now we've got the slide with the public consultations, which are for all of these, both of these strategies that you've heard about this morning. So we've got 4 dates coming up in the coming month at Keynsham, Somer Valley, Whitchurch and Bath. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. That was impressive to get through such a large document in such speed, which always I like, because it gives more opportunities for scrutiny from the panel. So on that note, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Okay, well, loads of people. We'll start with Anna, and then we'll go to Deborah, then we'll go to June.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah. So a few points in scrutiny. Just about the consultation, my scrutiny and my comment would be, can we please make it crystal clear that this is a master plan and it's almost like a shopping list? Because I have mentioned it to residents and they're so excited about it, and I think we just need to measure expectations.
Yeah.
I would very much like to point out that we would like an open update as well as a panel, but also as the residents. So if you say, did the master plan and you've got one of these schemes implemented, could we have an update? And maybe could you show your working to why those ones were updated? So, the constant Nez versus Bath thing, could you say, well, the pot of money only said X, Y and Z and that's why, so could you show your thinking? I think residents would like that too. I would also like to say that if you do one of these schemes, can you do more partnerships? So can you bring along the schools, for example, or patient petition groups from GPs? So it's an active travel. My job as a physiotherapist, it's about activity. Could you bring along the key partners in that? In our valley, we have a lot of pushback because we have bikeability schemes and stuff about cycle racks. So people see that, but they just say back to me, we can have all the cycle racks in the world, but the roads are really dangerous. So we need to, again, say it's coming and manage our expectations. And as I say, we were elected on a speeding mandate in the sense of dangerous roads, so this is really popular where I live. And the final point is around bikes on buses. Not to sound really, really silly, but I went to Hawaii a long time ago, and they have bike racks on the front of their buses. Is that something that could be involved? In Bath, I know I can't ask a WECA question here.
On the specific bikes on buses, we have had the conversations with the 2 major operators. Currently, they, for a whole heap of reasons around insurance and around safety, but also around keeping to their timetable, don't feel that at the moment it's something that they could do. We've looked at the potential of bike racks within buses, and at the moment it appears to be the case that they're saying we could only do that if we take away all the disabled provisions. So obviously we're not in a position to be able to do that. But to add to Sarah, and I think her and the team have done an outstanding job on this, over the period of time that this covers, I imagine that will be something that absolutely will become to the fore, so we will continue to have that conversation.
Questions you asked were about partnership and absolutely. Well, I mean, this we should begin with this consultation. People should do go and encourage residents and all of those groups that you've described, please, to feed into it, because we're very keen that as many people as possible will proactively go online or come to one of those events and tell us what they think. That's what we want to hear. But when it comes to any individual route, as if we're so fortunate to get funding for a particular route, there will of course be a consultation around that, and it may be that at that stage we could target it, you know, if it's close by a school or a medical centre or whatever. I imagine we would be looking to connect with those organisations.
Okay, Deborah?
Thank you, and thank you, Sarah, and to the officers as well, because I think this is a really brilliant piece of work, and it's really exciting to see that being set out. So my main kind of commentary on this is that I love the diagnosis and the way that the issues are set out and the evidence, and it's really great to see integrated routes that we can think about pulling together for the future, because I think quite a lot of the issues for people are knowing how they can join up the routes where things are safe and where roads are quiet. The slight disappointment for me is that you've got a great toolkit of measures where that doesn't seem to flow through into the plan very well. I'm going to give an example, but it's not the one thing, it's just an example. So in your toolkit, you talk about maintenance and the importance of road surfaces and making sure that cyclists don't have to work their way around potholes and people pushing buggies don't have to go over bumpy areas. That's so important. But actually, when you get to the plan, it's just routes. And there don't appear to be any objective measures in this plan that say, how are we going to deal with that? Now, it may be that the answer to that is that's in another document, in which case it would be helpful to be pointed at it. But there are some things that don't... Some things, I know we're limited by money, but there are some things where we've got choices. So another illustration is there are a couple of roads in my ward which are heavily used by cyclists but are on a very low priority for highway maintenance because they're cul-de-sacs for cars. I kind of think that's not quite the way that we ought to approach that. So there are things that we have within our power to do within our budgets. And what I would like to see from this is an understanding of how we're going to deal with all of the excellent stuff in the toolkits, that goes much wider than the routes, and how we're going to be able to monitor and measure and see what is actually delivered against that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. That's really constructive, helpful feedback, and maybe that we can weave some of that into the next iteration. And on the specific point that you raised about the potholes on routes that are frequented by cyclists, that will be an issue for Amanda and her team to address, but it's something, you know, I think lots of us would be very keen to see that, you know, just gradually, I mean, it's something, as you know, cultural change in an organisation is a thing that takes time, but to just gradually redirect slightly the emphasis of where we're putting our energy is maybe what we need to be doing more of.
Okay, June and then Saskia.
Thank you. In a way, Deborah has covered to a point what I'm raising. I know that this is a plan for the future. However, what are we doing about what we already have? I obviously, as you know, do a lot of walking everywhere, and I'm unable to use certain forms of transport because the conditions of the roads are appalling. As you said, the potholes are appalling. But even, I did read the word smooth once in this report for the cyclist section. I didn't read any other thing about what the surfaces are going to be like. Also, though, on top of that, is the fact, are you planning, it said the word attractive. What do you mean by attractive? Are we going to now get things, areas with trees in? I walk a lot along the Lower Bristol Road. It's horrendous where I live. And we've got a huge development going on there opposite the Bath Press. And the trees seem to have stopped on a corner. And now all we're going to be having for walking is either the road, fast-flowing road, etc., with everything that goes along with it, and menacing blooming buildings that go up and not even attractive to look at. However, I just wonder how we let that happen, even though I did go on about this when I was objecting. plus also when you go further up the Lower Bristol Road, by the traffic lights where Broomhaze is, the owner of that bit of car park gaily pulled out all the vegetation, and now we have another ugly bit of road, nothing to make it appealing. And if we want people to wheel and cycle, we have got to make it attractive to do so. And as a big walker, at the moment, overall, where I walk, I don't find any of it like that. So, as I say, I know Deborah was touching on this as well. Is there anything, or are we only purely thinking about what is coming along and not what's already existing?
Thank you, June. I think you've raised some really important points. So we can go back and make sure that we have talked about the road, the surface in relation to pavement and walking and wheeling surfaces as well. We'll double check that that's in the report, and if it's not there in a sufficient emphasis, we will make sure that in the next iteration it's got more emphasis on that. In terms of street trees, you raised a really important point. I mean, I'm not controlling planning decisions in relation to any individual building, but you have raised an important point about street trees. It's not subject to this policy, but it's certainly something that is a priority for us to consider and to improve.
Okay, Saskia and then Grant.
Thank you, Chair. So as Cabinet Member, Sarah, you are lead steer for this newly commissioned master plan, and I'm afraid I'm struggling to understand how this 120-page plus master plan is delivering for residents. I think it is too vague and consists of not much more than a collection of content that was taken from like other documents, so LCWIB, Journey to Net Zero Transport Plan for Bath. And I found quite a few mistakes in the document and some content that doesn't make sense in a local context. So there's a map in there which shows the geographical centre of Bath and North East Somerset, which is just north of Marksbury, where 400 people live, and it shows you where you can cycle from there. I don't think that's very useful. And the report uses very much the census data from 2021, which is evidence for routes for commuting. But this data is obviously skewed because many people were working from home. They were told to work from home. So, and the census very much added this disclaimer. So if we base the routes on that, then that's obviously, that may not show where people are currently travelling. So I guess why was another expensive report created instead of infrastructure being delivered? Or an actual plan made with like deliveries, as Deborah also mentioned. And how much did it cost us to pay ACOM to write this report? And yeah, I would like to know as well the time frame to costing and delivery of the master plan.
It's going to have that information. Do you have that information, Claire, or should we send it to you after?
Potentially it is skewed, but it is still the most up-to-date data set we have. But I think it's important to note we've done a first step. We have that interactive map. We've got 6 weeks' worth of consultation, so we can strike out and put new in. You know, if we've not hit the mark on where the routes need to go in terms of the community, they can tell us and we'll change it.
Do you want to come in on this? Oh, okay, so that's a separate question. Okay.
On to some of the other points that Saskia made. So obviously, if you found mistakes, please just submit them in writing and we'll ensure that they're corrected. What I would say is that this, we received rather late in the day legal advice on the precise format in which we were going to have to consult on this. So it has been somewhat more rushed than I would have liked to getting to this point. So there will be, as I say, I've already said that we're sending it out there as a genuine consultation, and we know that it is not complete, it is not, we absolutely want everyone's feedback. So mistakes, please send them in. Why have we done it? I think, hopefully I've explained that it really helps. I believe you yourself have perhaps been critical in the past of the occasions on which we have bid for funding and not been successful. The whole purpose of this document is to put us in a position to have successful bids for funding. Yeah, but the reason we've been unsuccessful is because our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan is out of date and not fit for purpose. So that's the reason why we are generating this document. And I mean, the cost of this is, much less than the process of implementing any individual cycle route. So it's an investment in giving ourselves the capacity to obtain funding and to change the way in which people move around in Baines in the future. That's probably dealt with most of the things you picked up, I think.
To comment, Saskia?
LC whip status. Could you comment on the LC whip status? Will that be updated? Is that something that we are forgetting about?
That's a West of England Combined Authority document. The reason we've created this master plan is because we weren't able to update that. So this once adopted as policy, it is not an LC whip, but it will be adopted policy, so it will put us in the position that, when we're bidding, if it says, is this in your LC whip, we may still have to say no because we're not able to update it, but we will say, but we do have an adopted policy that identifies this route as a priority.
Okay, we have Grant, and then we have Jess, and then we have Matt, and now we have Anna, and Grant.
So when you had the word map up there earlier, and it said fear quite largely, and I think most people think cyclists are fearful of cars, and in lots of cases that is true. I was regularly for years and years and years, changed my job now, but cycling down to Radstock from Poulton, using the cycle track the brilliant cycle track that's along there. And one of the most fearful things for me, the two things, was ice and leaves. And I'm well on board with June and wanting to put more trees along footpaths and make things look more appealing visually, and also obviously bring nature back to these areas as well. But the main problem is I had one dog come up to me one day, came off my bike, cut my knee open, and that was me not cycling to work for 2 or 3 months. So the big problem is that we're actually, each year, and this is an ongoing thing, a commitment to actually maintaining our cycle tracks, because that's a big part of why someone might, in the summer, think, yeah, I'll cycle to work for a couple of months. But really, we need to be that sea change of, no, we want people to do it all year round. Perfectly capable of doing it all year round. I'd rather not spend half an hour getting down to Radstock from Poulton when I can cycle there in 12 minutes. So a big part of the fear is also the maintenance. And I think that's sort of missing.
And I really hope that the new government actually will pay attention to the impact on there's been over the last 14 years on local council budgets to do exactly that sort of thing. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what the government will say about that. In terms of fear, actually, you mentioned fear and cycling in relation to the discussion with school children. I was just going to pick up, it wasn't a discussion solely about cycling, it involved any form of sort of independent travel for young people. And actually, it was partly cars, it was all kinds of things. One young person just wrote, they were writing on pieces of paper, and one young woman just wrote men. So it was all kinds of fear. I mean, it was quite striking how fearful, in fact, that they were. That was quite, it was a takeaway for me. So whilst trees are nice in some, they're pleasant to be around, I mean, I suppose that's part of the reason, actually, for setting out such a comprehensive document that gives people choices. Because if some people will be fearful of walking near to trees because of exactly that concern, who might be hiding behind the tree, depending on the time of day and the sort of location. So the whole point about setting out quite a comprehensive document is to give people choices and routes for all occasions.
Okay, now I've got a list that's growing, rather like these trees. We have Jess, Matt, Anna, John, June and Saskia. Okay, I think that's pretty much everyone anyway, so, okay, Jess.
Thank you. And thank you, Sarah and the team, for putting forward the document. I very much note the point in the paper that this is the first time that the Council's had an active travel master plan for the whole district, so it has to be a positive step forward. I'm really looking forward to seeing the interactive map. For me, that was the the bit that was missing when I was looking at the long document. I really wanted to be able to zoom in on my patch and see how that would, how this master plan would kind of benefit residents, I guess. And I'd also like to be able to promote the consultation to residents, so having that map and being able to share that would be really helpful. I wanted to make a point about consultation. I know that council resources are really stretched and we can put this stuff out there, but it's really difficult to make people come. So I wanted to ask what we can do to actively promote this with some of our major employers, like the universities, like the hospital, and get them to participate in the consultation. Even just emailing it out to dedicated contacts and asking them to send it through their network so that we're not just relying on people to pick it up in the internet. Likewise, you could use the counsellors, ask them to send it to their local schools and, ask teachers and parents networks to get involved, because those are the people that will know the walking routes and the cycling routes that they need to be improved, and can help, some of this to be pushed forward over time. And then my final point, this is very aware this is a bit of a personal one, but I'm really enjoying using the e-bikes to commute up to the university some of the time. And what I've noticed is that there really aren't many in Bath, and I've been told anecdotally that a lot of the bikes get moved to Bristol. So if over time we can grow the demand, please can we make sure that we're keeping them in Bath so that people really can start to have these point-to-point connections where you walk here, get an e-bike, get the bus home, because I think that's the way we need to progress.
Thank you, Jess. That's a great suggestion, and I've noticed that my colleagues have noted it down, so we'll do that in the consultation. We'll reach out to our sort of anchor institutions and schools and so on, and see if we can get them promoted. And absolutely, I agree about the e-bikes. I think the e-bikes are a brilliant way for people who haven't previously tried one to just have a go and see what the potential of them are. So that's a discussion with TIA to see if we can get more kept in Bath. But of course, some of those decisions they'll be making on a commercial basis. So of course, the more people are using them, the more they're going to want to keep them here. Because from what I'm hearing, they make most of their money out of the scooters and not as much out of the bikes.
Okay, I think it's Matt's go now.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I am a rural North East Somerset councillor, as well as I was the Cabinet Assistant at the beginning of this project. I'm very pleased to see quite a lot of our rural issues in this document, the missing footways, particularly Red Hill. So for those of you who don't know it, sat-navs actually turn this, what is a rural road, into a thoroughfare if you're trying to get from the west of Bristol to Radstock and beyond to the A36. And you've got kids who go to school in Timsbury now have to walk up this hill. There's no pedestrian infrastructure at all. But in the mornings you see the kids going to school and coming home from school. So there's no infrastructure, and you could walk from Radstock to Bath, but there's a missing chunk just past the Tunley Fork, up the hill onto the Odd Down Plateau. There's just no pavement there. There's a bit of grass, but there's no pavement. So you could walk by pavement all the way from Radstock to Bath, apart from that one little section. So I think it's really important that some of the local knowledge that we've been gathering in the rurals over the past few years is there in one document. I find it deeply, or maybe not ironic, that a Bath councillor should object to a map that puts any kind of centre in North East Somerset. But I would just, on that point, the chair of Marksbury, the former chair of Marksbury Parish Council, does actually cycle from Marksbury into Bath. And the first section of that has no cycling infrastructure at all, not until you get to the Globe roundabout. So along the dual carriageway, he cycles along there. Now, but what I wanted to particularly pick out is the lack of connection between villages. And that's something that's been concerning residents for a long time. Now, we've lost a lot of buses, but we're very pleased, obviously, with our colleagues from Poulton, who've managed to snaffle another bus out of Wecker. So Tunley and Camerton, the top of Camerton, do benefit from a new bus, but Preston and Englishcombe lost their bus from Poulton. And Preston councillors, parish councillors, asked the question, how are we going to move around with no bus? And they said, well, quite a lot of us are active, and quite a lot of us would like to cycle to Timsbury, but there's no road to Timsbury. You can go to Farnborough to Timsbury, or you can go to Tunley to Timsbury. But there is a footpath, and could that become a cycle route so people could nip to the shops in Timsbury and back again? And similarly, at the other end, there are green lanes that could link you to Bath. They did a bit of work. I think some of that work was forwarded to officers, but But the challenge then is walkers say, no, we don't want cyclists on our footpath. And the landowners go, oh, I don't know if I want a surface on the footpath. So I just wondered how the team will tackle that strategic view, that actually it's important to have a cycle link from Timsbury via Preston and English Green to Bath. So, and how would you manage that sort of local objections to a surface? Similarly, there's another route. Again, this is all local knowledge that you don't hear about until local people tell you. Or you launch a big exercise like this, where you start to pull in all that local knowledge. There's another bridle way that would link Whiteway to Newton St Low. So all the students who live in the southwest of Bath could cycle to Newton St Low, avoiding Padley or Pennyquick, which is incredibly dangerous for cyclists. I've never ever attempted it. So it's nice to see all the local information in there. It's good that we're looking for more local information, but I think the challenge is going to be, how do you prioritise or say, no, actually this becomes a strategic route. It's more important that we have a cycle link there than just a footpath and things like that. Thank you.
I think that is important. I think the next step will be prioritisation and working out from what we've mapped out, which are the first ones that we aim to put forward. But obviously, once we've identified a certain route as a strategic route, then the council has certain powers if it needs to be able to implement those.
Okay, so we move on to Anna.
Chair, I think as colleagues we can all agree that front and centre of our priorities is good use of taxpayer money, especially in an economic climate that we have at the moment, though I am very excited to see what the new government may bestow on local authorities. Just a quick point, would you say surely creating a master plan like this would be more cost effective because we're doing all the work kind of now with a view to be flexible? So as you said about, the officer said about changing it if more information came forward. To push back against Saskia's point, surely it's good use of money to do this as one project now, so in the future it can be more flexible than waiting until a pot of money comes from WECA, for example, and then scrambling around officers' times and trying to do a consultation. Isn't this more cost-effective to do it as one project? And I would also say that it was a bit of an unhelpful comment around the census data. I'm not sure what other census data we could have used, so maybe we need just be a bit more mindful about the points we're making in the scrutiny panel.
Thank you. I think that is our thinking, is that, if we do this plan now and we set out a very comprehensive vision, we will be more, more agile, more able to grab those pots of money when they come forward.
Okay, well, I've got John first, June, Saskia. Deborah, did you have a question? No? Okay, so let's start off with John then.
Thank you there. Bath has had a cycling mayor for some years. I have a two-part question. The first part is this. We've had a cycling mayor for some years. Has the cycling mayor been a partner in the development of the master plan, and do you see the cycling mayor as helpful in the delivery of some of this? And the second part of the question is, there is discussion in some quarters at the moment about the creation of a walking mayor for Bath, and would you welcome that?
Thank you.
Thanks, John. So, yes, I'm in fairly regular contact with the current cycling mayor, and I absolutely think that he and other campaigners in this space can be big helps in getting out the word about encouraging people to respond and to make sure that this is the best plan it possibly can be. Equally, people who don't cycle, people who prefer to walk, I'm very keen that they should all get involved. I mean, you raised some interesting points about engagement with groups, and you're probably aware that we've had a Journey to Net Zero Transport Stakeholders Forum that has it's somewhat struggled to find its way recently, and it's been somewhat in abeyance whilst we rethink that. But in the meantime, I have links with some of the relevant campaigners and speak with them independently. So absolutely, and very much welcome. If anybody has a plan to put forward a walking mayor, I'd be delighted to hear from them and to work with them. That would be great.
Okay. June.
Thank you. Well, I'll put my name up for walking mayor. I'll put it forward. I was going to ask, when have you got any more plans from the cycle lane point of view of doing them, repeating what you've done on the Upper Bristol Road? When that first came along, I decided to go along there and pretend I was catching a bus, and just to see what it was like for the people who have to cross over to basically for the floating bus stop. And I found it incredibly dangerous, and I wasn't in a wheelchair, and it must be so much harder. And I see endless videos on X showing how the cyclists zoom along, and they take no regard of whether there's anybody trying to get on or off a bus. Are we planning on any more of that type of cycle lane?
I think at this stage, this is a strategic document, and it doesn't go into that level of design detail. Okay. So it would be when we obtain the money for a particular route that we will get into that level of design detail. I mean, in terms of the floating bus stops on Upper Bristol Road, I would say that I think we are monitoring them very closely to understand whether there are any confrontations that occur between different users at those points. So we will have that data. And I suppose my experience from occasionally using the Upper Bristol Road cycle lane as a cyclist is that it doesn't tend to be people zooming who stay in the lane, actually, because those lanes are actually quite narrow for cycle lanes, and so the ones who want to zoom actually tend to stay in the traffic, whereas the ones using the lane are often the ones who are slightly less confident. And I suppose we are constrained in Bath in terms of the widths of the roads, so that that potentially is the constraint, and where, LTN 120 sort of guidance might set out a particular standard, that's where we're always trying to work out where is the trade-off, where is the balance. So what is really important is that we learn the class that we've already put in and take that forward into the design of any future routes.
Thank you. I picked up on what Grant said, concerns about the leaves on the cycle lane, which I totally can understand. We could use a lot more evergreens, they don't drop and cause that sort of problem. And maybe physical barriers could actually be made, and you have walkers and wheelers, wheelchair users, buggy people, etc., separate from the cyclists. And then you won't get attacked by a dog, hopefully.
Summary. Oh, there you go. Dogs. I mean, I've been attacked by dogs a few times when I've been cycling around. It's not pleasant, and it's quite funny. I mean, sorry, I'm going to go into a story. I won't do that. I'll leave it. So, Saskia, you're. I think you're last.
Thank you. Well, I may have more than one item. That's okay. But I'll go for one now. Yeah, my comments actually about shared use paths as well. So the master plan has our brilliant river and towpaths and other shared paths down as quick routes, which I was quite surprised about. So, and it also says that the plan is for that to be 20 miles per hour continuous cycle speed. Well, I never cycle at 20 miles per hour, and I would really not like to see anyone do that on the towpath between Bath and Bathampton. That would be an absolute nightmare. So I guess this is one of the mistakes that I mentioned. I think this is an error, and it also says that the quick routes would have a minimum width of 150 centimetres where space permits, but the latest guidance actually says that 150 centimetres is like an absolute minimum and shouldn't be used for longer stretches. So I guess the idea that the towpaths would be quick routes is just, I don't get that at all, because they're socially unsafe because of their isolated nature. They're basically 2 or 3 meters wide. The towpaths are basically 2 meters wide. So they're already there's a lot of conflict already. And if we want more people to take up cycling and walking and wheeling, I don't see how the towpaths are the answer to that.
You're not the complete answer, and if you feel you found a mistake in the document, please just send it in and we can ensure that it's corrected. I use that towpath often, as you know, because we meet each other, and I certainly don't do 20 mile an hour, and would be very frightened of how my interactions with dogs would occur at that speed. But there are plans, I mean, so, yeah. there are other projects. No, I'll just leave it there.
Saskia, do you have another question? And then June.
Do you want to go first, June?
Okay, thank you much, Lee. 20 miles an hour, I meant to raise that as well. I just looked at that and thought, what? That is unbelievable. When the Sustrans Linear Park, 2 tunnels route was being done a number of years ago now, I thought I heard mentioned 8 miles an hour for cyclists. But irrespective of that, do cyclists now have speedometers? Because how do you know? You've got one, obviously.
Bikes, yeah, e-bikes.
Oh, you're talking about the e-bike?
On an e-bike you can see it, which is how I know how fast I go on a normal bike. But yeah, basically 12 miles per hour is seen as the average for kind of average cyclists.
Oh, right, okay. I just thought 20 miles an hour, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
Right.
to answer your question, you can have a speedometer on a bike, on a non-e-bike, but not many people do.
No.
And I mean, 20 mile an hour is a good old lick, actually, to be fair.
And I've often wondered about, now we've just raised all this, I'm surprised that helmets are never needed anymore. I had a friend years ago, and she was a cyclist, and she had a crash, and it caused brain damage for her, and she wasn't wearing a helmet, and I always thought you were supposed to. When I then bought my granddaughter a bike quite a few years ago, when I bought it from Halfords, I said, oh, and is there a bell? And they said, we have to sell it with the bell, but the moment you walk out the door, you can take that bell off because you no longer need a bell either as a helmet. And that really shocked me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been cycling for years, not continuously, and helmet use has really improved in the last 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, hardly anybody had a helmet, but it's much better now. But obviously, there are still people who don't. And a bell is essentially, especially on these dual-use paths, because cyclists generally are quite quiet. So if you're walking along and there's a cyclist coming up behind you, I think it's only courteous that you should just ding the bell so that, they know you're coming, sort of thing. So I think it's getting better. I'd like to think it was anyway.
I will not comment on helmets or bells. Thank you. Talk to me afterwards if you want to know my opinion. I wanted to bring up Bath City to Bath University, the link. It's the second most popular origin destination pair for people commuting, according to the plan. It's also the only one of the 18 origin destination pairs that covers a distance of less than 3 miles. So I guess we've been talking about, the map. The map is amazing and people can add stuff and say that some routes are not good, but basically it covers most of our main roads, including all the 3 routes to the university. So, with Scholars Way in the pipeline, which is obviously on the, at the top of the hill, accessing this route is very important because otherwise a lot of school children in particular are going to miss out and they cannot safely get to this amazing Scholars Way, the amazing thing that Scholars Way will be. So North Road and Whitcomb Hill have been identified as potential quiet routes up to Cleverton Down. These roads are currently busy roads with a significant number of vehicles at peak times and no provision for cycling. So secondary school children are currently just lost there. Some children do use it, but I know especially their parents really struggle with that. So I struggle to understand how... I know that this plan is not supposed to say how the routes will be implemented, but I would like to see a kind of plan for how kind of the most urgent of the routes would be taken forward, and that would be... a route up to Cleverton Down, in my opinion, would be one of the most urgent ones to tackle.
I think I agree with you that the next stage we need is prioritisation of those routes, and a route within the city to a key employer will clearly be somewhere up there amongst that priority.
Okay, one more. That's your loss.
One more. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to talk about the core walking and cycling zones. Or was it walking zones? Core walking and cycling zones. So, obviously, as ward councillors, we haven't been consulted on this plan yet. We've been asking repeatedly for example, a bridge to be built between Larkhall Square and Alice Park. And we are not sure how we can get that plan, how we can get that scheme back on the plan. We don't see it popping up anywhere. We will obviously put it on the map. The core walking and wheeling zones and cycling zones, I couldn't figure out how these were decided on. In the east of Bath, only Bath Easton has been classified as a walking and wheeling zone. So I guess I'm just worried about Larkhall and Fairfield Park and other communities missing out on the necessary infrastructure because they haven't been identified as those zones. So I guess will there be a chance to respond to the core walking and wheeling zones in this consultation?
Please do. I don't have that information here today, and Nick, who drew up the plan, is on leave this week. So please just drop us an email and we can respond to you about how they were put together. And please, if you feel that there's a mistake or there's something else that should be included, just let us know.
Of that particular item, thank you, Sarah, for fielding many questions. Would you like a short break before we go on to item 11? Yeah? Okay. So, 10 minutes? Yeah? Because that's an opportunity to swap over. Yeah. Swap.
Okay, welcome back. You'll probably be surprised I'm not Andy Waite. He has had to go off early, so I'll just be presiding over this last item, which is to receive a response from the Cabinet to recommendations of the Food Task Group. And I believe, Councillor McCabe, you're going to be leading that response.
Am I? Okay. Oh, yes, I am. You're absolutely right. Okay. So it's obviously not just me, but I just want to read out what I wrote in our manifesto, if you'll indulge me. We said, look to support innovation, regeneration and localisation in food production and farming. We recognise that the climate emergency and geopolitics are providing challenges to food equality, food quality and our ability to feed ourselves. There's another bit. Seek to support local food production within and on the outskirts of our towns and city by trialling demonstration and prototyping zones where the policy environment is supportive of novel approaches such as agroecological market gardens, cooperative allotments, community-supported agriculture and land trusts seeking to grow and process food, build on the heritage of market gardens which surrounded Bath until the 1950s, while supporting local entrepreneurs, cooperative producers and the wider economy, which might include, for instance, helping to facilitate a regional food hub and sector training, and work with key partners, and there's a bit more. I bring that up because I think this report has focused really well on allotments and community food growing, but has missed that bit between that sort of enthusiastic individuals growing food and the commercial sector. And there's a whole chunk of people in that space who very often are new entrants into food production. They're potentially slightly naive, or they're all doing it out of the goodness of their heart, and it's a very, very tough space. And I think what my motivation behind those words in our manifesto last year was quite often the council or legislation and bureaucracy can get in the way. And I think this is one of the areas, and obviously I'm the cabinet member for planning, and the planning system is pretty hostile to any kind of structures in the green belt. So, this made reference to a regional food hub. If you look at the trouble, the challenges middle ground growers have had just getting a building away up at Western Spring Farm, you'll understand just that the challenges are working against us. So I think when you look at allotments, yes, you can start to see how allotments produce surplus and how communities can respond in terms of distributing that surplus, and I think that's looked at. But where you get cooperatives of producers, so in my own case, I am an apple grower. I don't produce enough either apples really or juice to offer a product, but what I offer is a hub, and the orchards at Dry Arch, Broadlands, Wellow and potentially English Combe, all those apples are picked by volunteers. All those apples end up in my barn, they get juiced and they get bottled, and half goes back to the volunteers who pick, and the other half is sold as Bath apple juice. And on that kind of cooperative arrangement, we've restored all those old orchards at a time when Heineken has grubbed up 350 acres of orchards in Herefordshire. We've restored the orchards around Bath because there's a product. There's somewhere for the product to go, and there's a bit of income generated. Now, my barn is not Food Standards Agency compliant, which makes the sale of Bath apple juice difficult, because you can't really sell it through a shop. You can only really sell it through events and things like that. So it makes it very difficult. So and what we're hoping is that Bath City Farm will take on that hub role. And we've worked really hard to get them permission for a barn, and part of that barn will have a Food Standards Agency compliant juicing and bottling area. And that's really important because they have a commercial outlet where they can sell the product. And if they can do that and get that off the ground, they will take on the hub from me, and the hub will continue to provide that support for apple production locally around the city of Bath. But the planning system, when you put forward, and you're asked for a business case to justify a building like this, in the World Heritage City, if it was just outside, it'd be in the green belts, in the conservation area, and you have to put forward a business case to justify And most farmers, commercial farmers, will just commission someone to do a report to show that there's a commercial need. Well, there's nothing commercial about the production of Bath apple juice. You know, it's volunteers, no one gets paid, and it makes enough money to keep the press and the scrutter going, and to pay for the equipment to clean everything and all that. You know, it's done out of the kindness of all our hearts. So it's very difficult to put together a business case to justify a commercial need for a building like this. So I tried to write something that showed the community benefit of a hub like this. And I think what I was kind of hoping for in the report back to Cabinet was something about how we can work to support that kind of hub, to support groups of producers who produce surplus, and how we can capture that surplus for the residents of the city and provide products. So if you think middle ground growers started a veg box business, then they bought the land, now they're growing the veg on a large scale, but you know they're all on minimum wage. But the other thing, the other thing you need to remember is that very often you mentioned Grade 1 agricultural land, and we should certainly be looking to support that. But very often, what you will find is actually commercial agriculture has degraded the land, and that's why you get sort of Grade 3 A and B. Because the land has been degraded because of the way it's been farmed. You know, if you intensively commercially farm something, then eventually the soil completely disappears, and you end up with just you're ploughing rocks. But then it gets called Grade 3, and it's no longer suitable for food. And I think what we need to recognise sometimes explicitly is that regenerative farming, and indeed so organic farming, if you like, can restore the soil, and in fact we could support that kind of food production around the city and restore some of the soil and bring that soil back up to Grade 2 or Grade 1. And I think there's an element of that needs to be talked about. Wildflower meadows, you know, everyone loves a wildflower meadow, but wildflower meadows need to actually be grazed from September to February, March, and then the hay needs to be taken off in June, July to provoke wildflower growth. And obviously the animals that graze wildflower meadows benefit from the herb mix in that species-rich grassland. So, you know, it's a win-win situation. But for the person with the meadow is, how do you get in touch with somebody with some animals who will graze the land for you? And secondly, who will take the hay off? Who will cut it, turn it, and bale it and take it off? And I think the other area that the council may be, in terms of working, if we put together a food strategy, is how do we put together those networks, almost like a business hub, is actually you put people in touch with, you know, the contractors who have the balers, and you put people in touch with each other. Who wants the hay if the meadow owner doesn't want the hay? So I think there's definitely a role there that the council could play. So I think in terms of where you talk about preserving growing space, I think it needs to actually look at how, in that sector between allotments and communities, but not quite yet commercial, where people own bits of land that can be used for food production, how actually regenerative farming can restore that land and build back the soil depths, and therefore preserves growing space. And in the local food strategy, I think that's where we look at, and I know that's what comes next, and maybe this is what we need to do, is look at building networks of services, and so that we can support different types of farming, especially species-rich grassland. And also where we look at local food growing. This is when new entrants very often come into the market, and they are right on the edge of financial viability. And I'm a big supporter of basic income for farmers, buy for farmers. That will support, rather than big government grants, is actually we look for a basic income for farmers to support new entrants into the market. And I would really, and one of my functions as the Cabinet Member for Planning is to look at how we embed some of this in the new local plan. But and part of the challenge of that is around innovation, because we don't necessarily know what's coming next. And we don't necessarily know how planning will be an obstacle to that. But what we really need is a policy environment that is very friendly to food production and very supportive of the sorts of structures, whether it's a physical structure or a coordinating structure, that could be in place to support new and smaller producers, where our residents will benefit from the surpluses we can produce. Thank you. What I wanted to say was that actually, although there's critical and I think there's bits missing, I think what you've done around allotments and community growing is excellent. And I think we just need to build on that and look at that sector between that level and the purely commercial, who are sometimes motivated more by profit than environment. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Is there any questions from the panel? Saskia?
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the partially accept of the lead officer to lead on the local food strategy. Could you comment on that? So I guess my question is, how realistic will it be to develop a local food strategy if there's no lead officer?
I think you're spot on. I think we need to think about where that sits. I think food resilience is going to become increasingly important. Whether you would like that in planning, or Sarah, if you think that should be under your remit.
The only reason for the partial accept is it's not clear where the money's coming from, like everything else in local government. So it's something we absolutely want to do. We set it out in the manifesto. We're very keen for it. I think at the minute it's a bit of a challenge sitting in Jackie's lap to try to work out how we're going to cobble together the money to do that, because having been through the budgets that Jackie manages with her in detail recently, I'm astonished at the way in which our amazing officer team cobble together all kinds of posts to do all kinds of things out of next to nothing. Talk on mine.
Yes, just to say that the challenges around how we can sustain that going forward in terms of long-term funding and making sure that we don't make commitments that we then can't back up. So what we're trying to do at the moment is work. So we've put a commitment towards the food strategy to take forward the aspirations that members have discussed in our economic strategy, and we're looking at how we can use some of the grant resource we have to take forward the economic strategy to put in place what we will do on the food strategy. It's trying to work with the grant funding pots we've got available to create something that can be sustainable, rather than setting something up, getting people excited and then not being able to follow through and deliver on it, which I think that really risks disappointing the community if we start things we can't follow through. But we are absolutely looking at it.
Okay. Councillor Player?
Thank you. I know this is very much raised in the food report. I do just want to emphasise yet again, Westmoreland Ward has not got one single allotment. We have endless development, and yet we're not catering for that aspect for people. We get no green benefits from it at all. Section 106, it'll be put, it'll go somewhere else. We want it, please, in our ward. Why should we be, we've already, I think Westmoreland Ward has given a lot overall to Baines from the point of view of giving housing and that type of aspect, but we're not getting back any of the green benefits that we really need and I think deserve, like every other part of Baines. I just have to push this yet again.
If you ever find a site that you think might be suitable, put it forward.
Yep. We've had a lot of development, make sure that they provide the proper outdoor allotment areas in their planning applications, please.
Councillor Box.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to the wider panel, as obviously I was not available for this working party, and I understand Sam was chair. Is that correct? Just a quick query, and maybe the Cabinet members can help me too. When I read the report, I couldn't see much about farmers and anything that the initiative could do for the council in the sense of locally grown produce, if we could help with linking up partnerships there, if we could help with promoting, if we could help with advertisement for our local farmers, or, I mean, dare I say, any kind of help with, I don't know, any of the services they receive. So was that in discussion, or was it just such a vast project that was put on the back burner for another time?
Yeah, I was a member on the task group. We were very constrained in our remit and in the time available because we were hoping to report in time to feed into the strategy, food strategy development. So there were lots of things that we just weren't able to accommodate. And that also, I think, touches on some of Matt's points as well. There were many, many things we just didn't have the time or the remit to address.
Did you want to come in, Matt?
Yeah, I come into that. And part of the challenge is obviously, now I'm a sort of hobby farmer. I'm a member of the NFU, but most proper farmers would call me a hobbyist because actually my holiday cottage provides the income, and I farm, I produce a crop out of the love of my heart. But the main thing to remember is that small farmers, you'll have seen from Clarkson's farm just how disastrous climate change can be, and that most farmers are not already multimillionaires. They're actually right on the edge, and they generally speaking, they don't have anyone who can engage and find out about what's going on and engage with bureaucracy, because they're farming for their lives, But it's really important that we do engage, whatever we do next. Really important that we do engage, and we look for those small farmers. We look for the smaller producers, because what we're witnessing in farming at the moment is generational farmers. This is the generation that are having to give up the farm. And it's absolutely devastating when a farm's been in the family for hundreds of years. This is the generation that's having to give up. We're losing farming. You'll have seen it's controversial farming. If you want to earn money from a poor field, stick some solar panels on it, and you'll get an income. Farmers are fighting for their lives, their livelihoods. So we do need to, and I'm just responding to the previous question. My thing is we've got no resources, but we can make sure that the council doesn't get in the way. It would be great if we had a bit more resources. We could do things to help. And certainly, I think, in terms of producing a food strategy, is to work with the local small farmers when the opportunity arises.
Okay, I've actually got a question, Matt, and it's to do with planning. So we, as you'll probably be aware, had quite a considerable amount of new housing in Poulton, my ward, and what commitment that was made as part of that development was new allotments for Poulton, which is still in the process of, well, at the moment, nothingness, it seems, because it's been going on for about 14 years now. And I just wondered if there's a mechanism or anything we can do within planning to make sure that these commitments, especially to when a developer commits to putting allotments or some proportion of allotments in, how we can we get that done sooner in the cycle of the house building? And I know it's really difficult, but we've got 400 new houses in Poulton, and we haven't got one more allotment.
Yeah, that is completely unacceptable, I think, completely unacceptable, and I'll certainly take that away and see if there's something we can do in the new local plan to strengthen that. But Section 106 agreements, I mean, obviously those final agreements with developers are usually the last thing that are provided, but it's not acceptable that you've been waiting so long against the development you've already had.
Councillor Warren?
I come in on that point? I was just going to say, I think that the government has announced that they're going to be a revamping planning policy, so perhaps it's something to pass up by your MP to ensure that in the new National Planning Policy Framework, councils have the powers, all the powers that they require to be able to do this in a more effective way.
Okay, Councillor Player.
Yes, thank you. You say you've had all these new houses put in. Do they have gardens?
Yes, they do, yes.
That is the huge difference with what's going on in Westmoreland. No gardens, hardly at all. It's flat after flat after flat. So we have an awful lot of people who need and require, and I think deserve, the benefits of the green space, the allotments, etc. And we're not in a position, which is why we have got to be much more strong, robust, in saying you have got to provide X amount of allotment in that development, in that ward.
I'm hearing a very loud and clear message, Chair, which I'll take away with me.
Thank you very much. Councillor McPhee.
Just to say to your point is that there is a mechanism now that when we want the developer to do something, we so-called condition it. And it goes in as a condition, and that has legal force. Before, when they just said, oh, we'll put a pub in or we'll put something in, and then they can walk away from it. In the Withies one, they've walked away from a community place that they said they were going to do, and now Cura say, well, they're not going to do it. And it's outside of that conditioning, just to make that point.
Okay, I don't think there's anyone else indicating. Thank you very much, Matt, for the response from the Cabinet for that. And the last item on our agenda is the panel future work plan. So coming up in our September meeting, currently on the plan, we have the annual climate and nature progress report, and then we have the circulation plan as well. So unless there's any comments on the plan, two, so Councillor Box indicate, three. Councillor Box indicate first.
Well, I've just thought of it, but can we maybe at a later date bring back the food strategy with an eye for business in the sense of farmers? Because it's an important business owners in our community, in Nes, and could we bring the food strategy with more of a view around farming? So that's one thing for the plan, is that right? And the second thing would be around enforcement for planning, so look at EMAC. We have a lovely dark skies policy in our region. Unfortunately, obviously that gets involved when the planning and then happens and then they don't do it. So can we please maybe look at enforcement from the council about that? So can we bring that on the agenda at some point in the future? So thanks.
Okay, thank you. I can't remember who was next. Do you want to fight it out?
Thank you. I just wanted to flag up Vision Zero, so if that could be scheduled an update for November, because it will have been a year since that motion was accepted.
Okay, yeah, it's been looked into to be brought to the September meeting. Okay.
Thank you. So my suggestion for a future item is to have something around waste, just to kind of more fully explore areas of our remit that we haven't got into in the last year. And a particular interest of mine is the waste that's generated on our high streets and in town centres. But I think it would be really good to get or request an update from a Cabinet member about our overall waste arisings and the progress that we're making as an authority, and then to look at some of those sticky issues where it's harder.
Thank you very much for that. So we are looking at bringing in the consultation on the Bath Recycling Centre to a future meeting, and I've just mentioned that that might be important to incorporate with a wider waste strategy as well. Okay. Yes, sorry, I
That's right. Councillor Collins. Yeah, so thank you. I think it would be really important for us at some point to schedule. It might be sensible at the same time as the housing policy, and maybe in a different session, to look at the way in which we apply our planning policies around retrofitting, and how we can both ensure that at a policy level our policies are strong enough to support the amount of retrofitting that we are going to need to do, but also that we understand the full application of the policies that we already have, and that we have all the right training that we need for both officers and councillors. So I'd really like to see that in the plan.
So, yeah, I think the housing policy that's coming to the September meeting will incorporate that, as well as the
response to the environmental and ecological.
And the response to the environmental and ecological emergencies will also probably touch on that. But Councillor Warren, do you want to come in there?
Yes, just on the agenda, I know how keen you've been to discuss the Bath movement strategy, and we haven't been able to cover it off on the last couple of occasions. Just thinking about the project timeline, I don't know 100% whether it will be at the stage where we can put it in the public domain in September. So I was going to suggest that if Kerry keeps in close touch with the officers, we can review nearer the time, and if you have some backup agenda items in case you have agenda space to fill and we have to defer again, then that might be wise.
Okay, and finally, Councillor Player.
Thank you. Referring back to Jess and the waste, I very much agree with her on that, but I would also, please, like to make sure we include any information we've got about, and I don't want to pick out any group in society, but I'm afraid the HMOs in Westmoreland, this is the worst year I have seen. I have got endless photographs of showing you the states of these properties. OK, the waste might not be on the pavement, but it's in gardens, in the front gardens. We all walk by. They haven't got fences. They're not screened off. It's virtually being on the pavement. It's just the other side of a bit of a wall or a bit of a small railing. But that is really bad, and I know that Student Community Partnership are feeling quite similar to me about it. So...
Okay, thank you very much. And that draws us to a close of this meeting. Thank you very much.